Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he is ready to sign a minerals deal with the U.S. after the agreement fell through last week following that public dispute between the Ukrainian leader and President Trump inside the Oval Office on Friday. The comments came after world leaders gathered in London yesterday for a summit on the war in Ukraine as European leaders seek to shore up support for Kyiv. We have team coverage this hour of the fallout from the Trump-Zelenskyy meeting and the next steps still ahead. Nancy Cortez is standing by this hour outside the White House. But let's start in London, where Ramy Inocencio joins us from just outside the British Parliament. Ramy, what were the main takeaways from this summit?
Chanel, good morning. And yes, America's allies are now pushing for some kind of ceasefire plan for Ukraine in the aftermath of that disastrous White House meeting between President Trump and President Zelenskyy. Yesterday, we saw heads of state, presidents and prime ministers, about 18 or so, come here to London in potentially was a kind of optical show of strength for Ukraine. For example, we had Emmanuel Macron from France come in, Donald Tusk from Poland, as well as NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and the EU President Ursula von der Leyen. And this actually was planned prior to that blow-up at the White House, but it took on this kind of new sense of urgency. And then at the press conference immediately after that 2-hour meeting with those leaders, Prime Minister Keir Starmer said a phrase that has been used ever since he spoke then: the coalition of the willing to try to support Ukraine. He did not say which countries would in effect ante up more investment, more weapons, but he said that we should expect countries to start talking about them very soon. He did delineate what the UK could do. Take a listen.
The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air. Together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing.
And some of the takeaways coming out of that summit, Prime Minister Starmer said that there is a new £1.6 billion deal. That's about $2 billion that would help Ukraine buy about 5,000 air defense missiles. We're seeing aerospace stocks here in the UK jump on that news because of that potential investment. Out of Germany, we're seeing media reports of two funds, one for defense and one for infrastructure for Ukraine being talked about with the incoming and the outgoing government as well. It's believed that that defense fund should be on the order of about $400 billion. And coming out from France, Emmanuel Macron and his government are saying that there is a proposal for at least a temporary 1-month ceasefire, a partial ceasefire that could see fighting in the air, from the sea, and on energy infrastructure pause, but not with ground fighting. There is some disagreement, however, and this goes to show that there is still talking going on. That's here in the UK. The Armed Forces Chief says that he doesn't know anything about this plan. With that said, Volodymyr Zelenskyy of Ukraine says that he knows what is going on, and he has been briefed about that.
Okay, and do we have any sense, Ramy, of how Russia is responding to all this?
In a word, Chanel, glee, another word, happiness. Medvedev, over the weekend after that blow-up at the White House, said that he called Zelenskyy a clown and that Trump did what he needed to do, but that the United States needs to do more in order to get to a ceasefire, and that was to pull out all funding, all military support for Ukraine. Also over the weekend, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, said that he thinks the U.S. and Russia are actually more alike than many people might want to admit. His words, he said that there is a mutually beneficial outcome if the Trump administration is able to push Ukraine to come to a deal in its favor. Chanel.
Okay, Ramy Inocencio in London for us. Thank you. And for more on what's next, CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez joins us now from outside the White House. Nancy, we heard from some lawmakers over the weekend. We'll also hear from Senator Chris Murphy later today. But first, let's listen to what Marco Rubio said.
Everybody's saying security guarantees to secure the peace. You first have to have a peace. We don't even know if the peace is possible.
The White House has become an arm of the Kremlin. Every single day, you hear from the National Security Advisor, from the President of the United States, from his entire national security team, Kremlin talking points. And the fact is this: Vladimir Putin is a brutal dictator. Russia started this war.
So, Nancy, what are your sources saying about where things stand right now between Trump and Zelenskyy? I mean, is a deal still possible?
Well, I asked President Trump directly that question on Friday. I said, what's it going to take to restart these talks with the Ukrainian leader? And he said, point blank, Zelenskyy needs to stop saying Putin this and Putin that, all these negative things about Putin. President Trump just doesn't want to hear it. He wants a quick deal. He doesn't want a lot of obstacles. He said that Zelenskyy has to want peace, and that all this talk about security guarantees is pointless when Zelenskyy himself is not holding all the cards. Zelenskyy said over the weekend he does want peace, but he needs those security guarantees. Otherwise, he argues, any ceasefire would be pointless. So that is the main tension here, Chanel, is the fact that the Ukrainian leader wants to go into peace talks with some kind of guarantee that the U.S. would come in with peacekeeping forces, some way to force Putin to hold up his end of the bargain, because there is so much mistrust there.
And Nancy, we heard what Ramy Inocencio was reporting about what European leaders are now doing in response to that meeting on Friday that went awry. Has the White House reacted to that?
No, they still believe that they are the ones, the only ones who could pull off some kind of a negotiation with Putin. In fact, Rubio said that point blank. The only person who can do this is President Trump. And even then, Rubio said it may not be possible. It may not be possible to come to terms with Vladimir Putin. But the only person who has a shot, he argued, is Donald Trump. Although what you're hearing from multiple White House officials is if President Trump is going to stick his neck out for Ukraine, then Ukraine is going to have to play by his rules.
And Nancy, I know you have some new reporting this morning about more changes at USAID. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So what we know is that an acting assistant administrator, his name is Nick Enrich. He's the acting administrator for USAID Global Health. He has been placed on leave, according to a couple of sources. And the reason is because he issued a pair of memos on Friday that was critical of the political leadership at the State Department. One of them, for example, one of these memos was critical of the overall pause on federal assistance, and that obviously did not go over well with Secretary Rubio or other leaders, political leaders at the State Department. So he has now been placed on administrative leave. Sources tell us that he was put on leave for simply trying to do his job and documenting what is happening, all the obstacles they say are being placed in the way of simply administering aid that has already been approved. But clearly the leadership at the State Department felt differently, and he is now on leave.
Okay, Nancy Cordes, thank you.